Welcome, Nicole, to the Happier at Work podcast. I'm absolutely delighted to have you join me today as my guest. Would you like to introduce listeners to you, a little bit about your background and how you ended up where you are today?
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to be here with you. So I'm the Chief Wellness Officer at Balance by Nature, which is an award-winning corporate wellness company. And I have the amazing job of helping people feel good all day. I got into this because I used to be on the other side. I used to be one of those stressed out executives burning the candle from both sides in the corporate world, working my way up the ladder. And I did that for a long time until I had too much stress happening in my life, between the stress from work and the stress from my dad getting sick with cancer. And all of a sudden, all that stress kind of hit me from all sides and started making me physically sick. And, when you don't feel good, it makes everything in your life just so much harder. And I didn't know how to slow down at the time. So I just kept on going and trying to, hope the problem would go away. And it just really didn't. And eventually I was kind of forced to take some time off work to heal my body. And as soon as I removed myself from a big source of stress and started focusing on my own self-care, guess what happened? My symptoms just disappeared.
Yeah.
And that was a huge light bulb moment for me, where I realized that you can have the healthy lifestyle of, exercise and eating well, but if you have all this stress in your life, none of the rest even matters. So that's kind of what inspired me to leave my corporate career behind and start a wellness business so that I could help other busy professionals learn how to create meaningful balance in their lives so they can still keep doing what they love and performing at a high level, but in a more sustainable way that's going to allow them to thrive in the process.
Yeah. I love that approach, Nicole. And I think your story is very relatable, especially this idea that you need to keep pushing through. Let's ignore the symptoms as they're happening. Let's
Yeah.
just plow on. I don't know, is it a specific corporate mentality where you just think, I have a job to do, this is what I'm being paid to do. But miraculously, when you remove that source of stress,
Yeah.
you feel really good. So I think
Yeah.
it's a really, really great place. It's a really great place for us to start is, what does that actually look like? So if someone wants to remove that source of stress, but without actually leaving their job, what does that look like?
Yeah. I think one of the biggest things is that when you are facing a challenge in your life, a health challenge, let's say you're feeling overwhelmed at work, you have to change something in order to have a different result.
Yeah.
Somebody told me a long time ago, if you keep doing what you've always done, you're only going to get what you've already got,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So if you are recognizing that your situation is not sustainable right now, you have to be willing to do something to change, and ideally do it before you're forced to do it.
Yeah.
And that's the hard part, because like I said, I don't think I knew what to do at the time. I didn't know really how to slow down, and I didn't have a guide to kind of help me figure out how to rearrange my routine every day so that I could find that balance. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, that just led me to just keep going down this path where, I stayed in the unsustainable situation until it just got so bad I had no other choice, but I was forced to take a leave of absence from work. And you don't want to have to do that,
Mm,
yourself. It's not good for you. It's not good for the business, obviously, right? So I think, that mentality of just pushing through it, a big part of that is like society in general. I
mm,
think that part of that comes from the corporate culture that you're in,
yeah.
specifically, at least it was where I was at the time. And then part of it is just that education piece too, and the resources. I didn't really have access to resources to help me handle stress so well at the time, and really figure out what I needed to do. So I think those were the things that kind of led me down that road of just keep going and hope it goes away, right? And that
Yeah.
can work.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to say exactly that no one teaches us these things. And if you find yourself in a situation and you don't know what to do, you just tend to stay stuck there, I think, and because you don't know what resources you have at your disposal, who can you reach out to, or what can you look up online. And I think, on the one hand, yes, that is the case. On the other hand, what I can see happening in the marketplace at the moment is so many wellness providers teaching companies and working with organizations to create these more sustainable environments, for want of a better word, I think. So, I suppose that there's two sides to it. It's making sure that you're getting access to those right people so that you can educate them about what's going on, so that they know that these resources are available to them. And, what are the biggest things that you see in your business, when you're working with clients? What are the biggest causes of stress that you see at the moment?
Well, I mean, the largest one right now by a landslide is the pandemic.
I can
Right?
guess. Yeah.
And there's for so many reasons, for so many people, right? Everybody is suffering right now in one way or another, and that's just the reality of it. We've had this has gone on for so long. A lot of people get a lot of anxiety just about the uncertainty that's
Yeah.
happening, about not knowing, what's going to happen, or, where this is going to take me. There's a lot of fear that's coming up for a lot of people about being out in public, and am I going to get sick, and what about my children? And then on the other hand, we've also had for a long time these parents that have been trying to juggle, how do I work from home while also trying to supervise distant learning with my children, which was such a disaster. I mean, I started the pandemic with a virtual kindergartner. Can you imagine?
Oh no.
Literally like the most unnatural thing in the world. And that was really challenging. And then on the flip side, you have other employees that live alone that were really acutely feeling that isolation that came from it. There's been social unrest, all over the world. There's been, all kinds of different really major issues, really heated, toxic political climates all over the place. Just a lot happening. And all you have to do is turn on the news for a second, and we're living in the stress response, right? Because it's just, fear coming all over the place. And so I think all of those things, and that's on top of normal stress, right?
Yeah.
Which is like, issues with
Work
your
stress,
relationships, or, financial worries, or, whatever else you have going on in your personal life. So it's just a really intense time. And that's really what I'm finding. And when I'm talking to my clients and working with the employees, that's what I'm hearing, is that they're all really stretched thin right now.
Yeah.
Everybody is feeling really overwhelmed, and they need somewhere to turn. So I'm probably receiving now more than ever the most positive feedback I've ever heard from clients, from employees. Usually they take the programs, they're excited, they might say thank you, but like that's kind of it. But now like people are reaching out proactively, really thanking us, for being able to help them and give them practical, real tools that they can use to feel better. Because that's what it's all about.
Yeah. It sounds kind of like well-being at work has gone from this tick box exercise that companies think, oh, we should do a well-being program, to this is the basic necessity at work right now, is we really need to support the well-being of our staff in every aspect that means, be that the financial well-being that you were talking about. And actually something came to mind. I was on a judging panel for an awards recently, and one of the candidates, one of the competitors that really stood out for me, was the one that addressed absolutely every aspect that you can think of to do with well-being. So it wasn't just the physical side of things, it wasn't just mental, it was all encompassing every aspect that you can think of in ways that you can support your employees. But not only that, they actually actively promoted it. So it wasn't just like, oh, we sent a newsletter to let people know that they now have access to this. It was like, no, and we tell them this is what you have access to. And we look then at the results, and we look at the improvements. We look at the not who has accessed what, but like what percentage has been accessed. Versus, and being able to look at all that. I'm a total data research nerd, in case you hadn't realized. So I was really impressed with all of these stats that they were able to share. but where I'm trying to think where was I going with that point? It was really around this shift in mentality from it's a tick box exercise to no, this is fundamental to doing business. We need to really look after our people. And we spoke before we hit the record button. We spoke about one of the big challenges now globally is this return to the office, whatever that means. And means different things in different places. And certainly in Ireland, people are starting to go back into the office, and it's this sense. And again, we touched on this point before we started recording of whether or not you have a choice as to whether you go back to the office or not. You know, who actually gets to decide? Are you being forced back to the office, or do you get to decide that you can work from home for a few days in sort of a hybrid type of model? And what are you seeing with your clients?
Yeah, I'm in Los Angeles, and in California, we have probably had some of the strictest, mask mandates and just everything compared to the rest of the country and probably even the world, I would imagine. So, it's a little bit different where I'm sitting, compared to where a lot of people are. But most of my clients are not back in the office yet. They had planned to go back, and all those dates just keep getting pushed. Getting pushed. There are some people that definitely are starting to come back. They're offering it as optional, right? But all the conversations I'm having with the senior leadership is basically what is our strategy, and how does that connect with our culture? Yeah. And that's really a big, important piece of it too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because it's like they've a lot of them have these beautiful offices and now nobody is sitting in them. They want to collaborate, but is it safe to do that? And so it's really challenging because this pandemic didn't come with a rule book, right? There's no handbook that tells, an organization the right way of doing it. So I think part of that really is leaning on that culture. A lot of the clients that I work with already had a very strong corporate culture where, many of them even already offered a lot of flexibility to their staff. A lot of organizations, especially like my tech clients that I work with, they're known obviously to be a lot more progressive with their thinking and culture and benefits. A lot of them already had policies in place that said, work where you want, when you want.
Yeah.
As long as your work gets done. And those were the types of organizations that also offered unlimited, time off for people as long as your work gets done. Now that's very, very, progressive on the edge. Other organizations, they don't have a choice really because of the physical aspect of their work. They have to be there. They can't just they're not just sitting at a computer. If you're in manufacturing or whatever that you're doing, you have to physically be there. So I think there's a lot of different areas and different ways of doing it. But I think the organizations that are going to thrive through this process are the ones that are really keeping their finger on the pulse about how their employees are feeling, really connecting with them about what their needs are, about what it is that they want in terms of coming back to work, in terms of, what well-being support they need so they can feel good as they do their work and stay healthy, et cetera. Those organizations are going to come across to their employees showing them that they care, helping them feel appreciated. And that's going to help them through this time of really high turnover that's happening all over the place in the market.
You brought up some really valuable points there, and I just want to kind of reiterate those. One of them is about the organizations that are going to thrive, and it's all about really asking your employees, but also listening to what it is that they say, what it is that they're looking for. And if they're saying that they want this flexible, remote style of working, then, don't ask them if you can't give that to them. But if you can give that to them, then what's stopping you? And aligning the culture with the overall business strategy so that the people culture is the same, the people strategy is the same as the overall, or it feeds into the overall corporate strategy that they have. I love this idea of showing that they care, and showing that employees are appreciated. And sometimes that's just a simple thank you. Thank you
Yeah.
for doing your job. Thank you
Right.
for going above and beyond.
Wow.
It could be another form of recognition as well. So, what are and we kind of started talking about this idea of the returning to the office and what that might actually look like. And I know it is going to be different in different places. I suppose where I'm trying to get to with this is, what do you see as the barriers to making that happen?
Yeah. To allowing them, or to the policies, you mean?
Yeah, the policies or something. There might be something with the leadership where the leadership are saying, no, we want to have people back in the office so that we can see what they're doing. I feel like there's still a little element of that mentality going around. However, I also recognize that that might not be the case with the kind of people who would hire you to begin with, because if they're hiring you, they're forward thinking, they're these progressive type of companies. So maybe you don't kind of, you're not seeing that, or I don't know whether you're hearing anecdotally that exists.
Yeah, I mean, I do, right? Because when I do these programs for the clients, I'm working directly with the employees
Yeah,
often. So I get the opportunity to talk to them. Every time I do a presentation, I always do a lot of polls. I always gather a lot of feedback, ask a lot of
yeah,
questions as I go along, have them share stories with me. So I really get an opportunity to hear a lot from the employees and how they're feeling. And it's hard. It's really hard, especially for the ones that have had to go back and they had to do it. I have several that had to go back at the beginning of the pandemic just because of the nature of their job.
yeah,
It's an in-person kind of thing. Like, you can't
yeah,
do it remotely. And there was a lot of anxiety coming
yeah,
from those people. They were worried every single day. And it wasn't even just for them. It was because they have an elderly mother who's kind of sick, and so they were really worried about bringing exposing other family members to things, and how do I stay safe. And our need for safety and our need for security is one of the most intrinsic basic human needs that we have, that started from the moment that we were born. And when we don't feel safe, it literally just rocks everything in our life, and it leaves us feeling very, very disconnected, very kind of unhinged in a lot of ways, right? And so when we don't feel safe, so much of our mental energy is being spent trying to figure out that problem. And when it's not a problem that you have a lot of control over,
yeah.
that is when it can really take you down that downward spiral into, anxiety and panic attacks, and, lots of fear-based, thinking and behaviors. And it starts impacting every aspect of your life.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny one, because I feel like that's come up a lot during the pandemic, and certainly in conversations that I've had, with this idea of this, the circle of control versus the circle of influence, versus like anything outside of that is completely beyond your control. So don't even try to go there. Now, you can expand your circle of control. You can expand the things that you control, but there's so much that you can't control, and not to be dismissive of people's fears, but if you can't control something, then you need to kind of let that go. You need to focus on the things that you can control. You can control how you respond to these types of situations. You can't control how other people are going to behave. You can't control what the government does and what the government mandates, and you can't control all of these kind of external rules and regulations that some people feel are being a little bit forced. But think about, like, what is it, like, what can I take control of? What can I take responsibility for? I can take control of my own health. I can go outside for a walk and get out to nature, like all of these
Yes,
wonderful things.
yes.
Um, so it is. I think that idea of what you can control and what you can't control is kind of, it's really crucial for being able to manage that type of anxiety that you get when something like this happens.
Absolutely. And one thing that I have just been so surprised about, and I shouldn't be surprised, but I am, is why are people not talking about how to boost your own immunity right now? We're talking about vaccines and we're talking about trying to find treatments and all this, but how about how to stay healthy
Yeah.
so that you can best, show up and not get sick in the first place? And no one is talking about that. And that's something that, is so vitally important because there's four main things that help us boost our own immunity. The first thing is exercise. You have to move your body. And so many people during this pandemic have slowed that down. They're
Yeah.
not moving as much. We're not going as many places. We're stuck in front of our chairs, Zooming all day back to back. So even the little like get up and walk around breaks aren't happening. So that's a
Yeah.
big issue that needs to be addressed. The second thing is nutrition. And that is probably actually the most important piece of it, right? Because every single thing that we eat is either your greatest medicine or your worst poison that you can
Yeah.
put in your body. And there are specific foods that have really strong antiviral properties. There are specific foods that are amazing for boosting your immune system. And there's certain foods that are really going to make you a lot worse in this process. So getting some education about having that proper nutrition right now is really important. And then the third thing is sleep. People don't realize that our immune systems rebuild themselves while we're sleeping. And so, I'm hearing over and over from so many people that sleep has been really affected during this
Mm.
time. And that's a huge problem. So even if you can just try to go to sleep 30 minutes earlier,
Yeah.
something like that, or start 15-minute increments and just try to go to bed a little bit sooner. Maybe it means, getting a new pillow, or maybe it means getting a new mattress, something so that you can have a better sleep environment. That's going to go a long way toward improving your health. And then the final thing is reducing stress. Because when we are under stress, when our stress response is activated, right, that lowers our immune response.
Mm.
Right? It starts lowering every aspect of our health that's not essential, right? For running or fighting your way out of a situation, that fight or flight response, right? So it shuts down the digestive system, the immune system, the reproductive system, the growth process, et cetera. So when we're stressed, that's actually lowering our ability to fight off illness. So having ways, like practical ways to let some of that stress go, finding ways to create more balance in your life and in the way that you structure your day so you can give yourself enough of those, joyful or mindful moments to balance out the stress is more important now than it's ever been.
Do you have any specific tips? There's kind of one more topic I'd love to touch on that we very briefly mentioned earlier. But do you have any specific tips before we get to that on reducing stress, creating more balance? And I'll just reiterate for the purposes of the podcast, this term balance has come up several times and so many people have their own interpretation of it. I put a poll on LinkedIn and most people said, yeah, happy to call it work-life balance, but other people call it work-life integration, work-life harmony. What else was there? Work-life fit. And then there was just to like take the work out of it. It's just life. It's just your whole life and life harmony and life balance. And I just wanted to call that out because it's always a really great hot topic and debate. And I am contributing to a magazine at the moment all about this concept of balance. And again, I wanted to highlight that people have different perceptions, and this just using the word balance, it sounds like a balancing act and you're trying to balance everything. And it's, and usually you're complaining that you don't have balance because you're working too hard or whatever. But do you have any sort of practical tips that you can share that people can introduce into their day-to-day lives?
Absolutely. So I am all about balance. There's a reason our company is called Balance by Nature, because it's all about bringing your life back into the natural balance that we're designed for ourselves to have.
Yeah.
So I really think that when we have all these stressful, crazy moments in our day, the only way to bring that to equilibrium, to balance, is by giving yourself enough of those nurturing, quiet moments to
Yeah.
balance it out.
Yeah.
So start by conquering your morning. That is the most important thing that you can do, because how you start your morning, how you feel, I'll replace that word, how you feel in the morning sets the tone for your day. And that basically sets the tone for your entire life experience. So if you start your morning stressed out because you're running late, you're trying to do too much, you look at your phone first thing in the morning and you're already like, oh my gosh, all these people and there's so many emails, and or you turn on the news, you're starting your day in the stress response. And that
Yeah.
is setting the tone for a very stressful day. And we don't need that. And the truth is that we are giving our energy away all day long. We give to our partners, we give to our children, we give to our colleagues, we give to our clients. We're just giving. And if we don't give to ourselves first, that is going to leave us feeling really depleted. So find a way to take 15 minutes in the morning. And if you need to start with 5 minutes, start with 5 minutes, but just do something that feels good to you so that you can give to yourself first. Now, that can look very different depending on what your interests are, right? I wake up in the morning and the first thing I do is I just think of 5 things I'm grateful for. Thank you for this warm bed I get to sleep in. Thank you for the roof over my head. Thank you for the clean, hot water coming out of my shower. Right? It's like the little things that really aren't so little, that like people
Mm.
all over the world really don't have. Amazing, right? So I think of that because that sets me in a good mood. I leave my yoga mat out on the ground next to my bed, and I just roll out of my bed and I take only 5 minutes to just move and stretch a little bit of my body, because I've been lying in this prone position all night. So it just feels good to stretch a bit.
Yeah.
I might sit there and do like a few minutes of deep breathing. I have a prayer practice I might do for a couple of minutes in the morning. I've got some inspirational card decks. I love pulling an inspirational card in the morning just to set like an intention for myself. If I have time, I love going for a walk in the morning. It just depends if I have time or if I don't have time for that. But, I try to give myself at least, 10, 15 minutes to do something that feels good to me in the morning.
Mm.
I will turn my whole morning routine into a self-care practice because it doesn't take extra time. So what
Yeah.
I mean by that is I'll turn on like my favorite music while I'm in the shower, something
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
going to like lift me up and get me excited. I love using all my senses in the morning. So I'm big into essential oils, and I'll take like an oil like peppermint if I'm tired because that wakes you up, or like a citrus oil like orange or lemon is very uplifting to the mood. And what I'll do is I just put a few drops at the outer edges of my shower before I turn the water on. And then when you turn the
Oh.
water on, it basically turns your shower into a giant diffuser so that you're just smelling these aromas, while you're taking a shower, and it's uplifting your mood without even trying. So I'm listening to my music, I'm smelling this amazing, these oils, and I'm thinking through like all the positive affirmations that I have that I really want to drill into my head, for that day. Right. When I'm getting dressed, when I'm doing my hair, when I'm getting doing my makeup, I will listen to either an inspirational podcast or a motivational speech, which you can find tons of them on like YouTube, or a chapter from a book, an audio book. So I try to listen to something while, something uplifting, something inspiring while I'm getting ready in the morning, right? And even if I just do those few little things in the morning, it makes me feel so much different. I can
Mm.
tell when I've done my morning practice and when I haven't. When
Yeah.
I do my morning practice, I'm a lot more grounded in my day and things just bounce off of me so much easier. I find that I'm a lot more patient. When I skip my morning practice, my kids might hit my buttons, and,
Yeah. Yeah.
like I lose my patience, and things get to me and bother me so much more in the day when I don't do it. So I can feel the difference for
Yeah.
myself when I do something or not. So that is the place to start. And then I really try to teach people how to just incorporate like micro moments of well-being into their day, because I think one of the biggest challenges that people have is that they feel that they don't have time to take care of themselves. I don't have time for this. And it's this time issue. And if
Yeah.
we can make something small and bite-sized so that it feels possible, then all of a sudden now we're getting somewhere. So
Yeah.
maybe it's just, doing a walking meeting. I'm doing a lot of these, and that's a big thing that I can share with your group is that if you are, instead of sitting in front of Zoom, if you don't have to present that day, or if you don't have to share something on the screen, why don't you say to the other person, hey, do you want to take a walking meeting with me? Where we both go for a walk outside and have the same conversation, because then we made that productive time. I didn't have to fit a walk into my day
Yeah.
and find the time. I had a meeting, so it was work time, but we both got outside. And when I make that suggestion, everybody always loves it. They're like, oh, this is the best
Yeah.
suggestion I've ever heard, right?
It
Getting
is. It's such a
out
nice
there.
idea. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've even had people say to me, "Do you mind if we have a phone call instead?" Because that they wanted to go out for a walk and get their walk in. I mean, Nicole, you've really inspired me with that because I am struggling with my like, oh, what should I? I know I need a morning routine, but I'm like, what should I do? And I have essential oils, but I don't use them. I
Mhm.
have my yoga mat. I have my gratitude, what's it called, 5 minute journal. I
Mhm.
just don't use them. So you've inspired me now. Tomorrow morning, I'm getting up and I'm not checking my phone because that is what I do. Is I reach for the phone, I see
Yes,
what notifications I've had. Now I don't get angry or annoyed. It's usually good
right,
stuff that I'm looking at,
right,
and I feel energized. But
right.
still, to really set the tone for the day, I think that's a really nice idea. I love this idea of the micro moments and just building those short times. I'm a huge advocate for not having back to back meetings.
Yeah,
So, not having like a 1 hour meeting followed by a 1 hour meeting. It's a 45-minute meeting or a 50-minute meeting. And
yeah.
you have your little break then. This concept of no time is universal, and I'm not going to be like the preacher of this because I'm just and I hate using the word guilty because that means like you know but I am just as guilty as the next person for this. However, what I will say is a reframe of I have no time is I'm not prioritizing that
Yeah,
right now.
yeah.
It's not about we all have the same amount of time. And interestingly, one of the podcast episodes from a few episodes ago was all about this time, this concept of time, our relationship with time, which I think
Mhm.
is fundamental to how we live our lives. Are you looking at the past? Are you focused on the present? Are you looking into the future? Are you positive? Are you negative about the experiences that you have? All of this kind of like it's so interesting how you approach the way you use time and how you estimate the amount of time things are going to take, all of this kind of stuff. So interesting. But just that simple reframe, I think, too. um it's not about I have no time, it's I'm not prioritizing that. And if you shift it in your mind to I'm not prioritizing that, I'm like, wait a minute, why am I not prioritizing
Mhm.
that?
Exactly.
Why
It's
am I not
because,
prioritizing myself and my health?
and I
Yeah.
think it's because we don't think it's as important. And
Yeah.
that's the thing that's wild. It's like we're prioritizing our work over our own well-being.
Yeah,
And that's
exactly.
what I
Yeah.
see happen all the time. And yes, your work is important. It is. But you are more important than your work. And I
Yeah.
will tell you from my own experience of having been very, very ill, when you are sick because it went way too far down the road, your work, you can't give 100%, right? You have to give to yourself. So it's reframing also, and asking that question, like you said, well, why am I not prioritizing myself?
Yeah.
Is there something there, that resistance of not wanting to take care of myself, right? So you have to kind of get a little curious about that and then make a decision that I'm worth it. I am worthy of this and I need this. And prioritizing that 15 minutes in the morning is going to give me so much more than anything else I could be doing. It's like it's putting me ahead rather than being behind. And,
Yeah.
all day long, right? It makes a huge, huge difference. So it's really deciding what's important to you
Yeah.
and prioritizing yourself. But I think the reason people don't do it is because there are some blocks that people have about not feeling worthy of it.
Yeah, yeah. No, I picked up on that, and I jotted down the word worthiness. Now that's probably a whole different podcast episode in
Yeah.
itself, and it's getting very deep. And I realised
Yeah.
we're kind of getting towards the end of our time, but it is such an interesting concept. So maybe it's something, food for thought for people just to question, like, am I, if I'm not prioritizing myself, what does that say about myself and my kind of subconscious beliefs or my blockers or whatever that might be? But yeah, really, really interesting point there. The point that I did want to come back to before we finish up is the idea that we touched on very briefly is the great resignation. So what's going on and what do you see as the driver of that? And do you see that happening in the companies that you're working with? And like, I suppose what are people on the ground actually saying?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's happening everywhere, definitely. And I think people are feeling a little bit more empowered now. I think at the beginning of the pandemic, everybody was just doing their best to just hunker down and hold on, and hope that their job was still going to be there, right? So I think there wasn't a lot of movement at the very beginning of the pandemic. I think there were a lot of people that were getting laid off, obviously,
Yeah,
because the company was was having financial issues, et cetera. But now that organizations have kind of seen their way through and there's a lot more stability, employees are now feeling more empowered to look at that and go, wait a minute. Does this organization, are their values aligned with my own values? Are they actually
yeah,
walking the talk of their values now? Are they
yeah,
providing me the flexibility and the support that I really need to do my best work? And if the answer is yes, you're going to have really engaged employees that are happy and loyal and innovative and doing their best work. But if the answer is no, then there's a disconnect there, right? And then you're going to have people leaving and moving to competitors that are willing to offer them that. So those
yeah,
are things to really consider. And I think for every leader, they need to look at what their turnover rates are right now and what's happening in the market. And the other thing about it too is that you keep reading how there's it's an employees market, but for some reason it's hard for these companies to hire the right people as well. So
yeah,
it's challenging. So I think for a business, they need to look at those numbers and go, okay, you know what, this is an issue we need to get ahead of
yeah,
rather than just being reactive to, how can we proactively avoid losing our top talent? Because that's the worst thing that can happen to a business. The number one asset a business has is their people, for sure. It's the biggest expense on the budget, right? Is payroll. And so your
yeah,
people really are your number one asset. And if
yeah.
you can invest in their well-being and create policies that help them feel supported and appreciated, you're going to really do well for yourself by maintaining that talent and attracting top talent as well, new talent to come into your business.
Yeah, you're speaking my language now, Nicole, when you talk about things like the values being aligned and hiring the right talent. And it is disappointing to see that some companies are struggling to actually find the right people to begin with. And it is really about, to me, clearly defining what those values are and making sure that you get the right people in to the organization who are going to stay for the long term. Because exactly like you say, when you look at things like the turnover rate of employees, and I think the average is about 15%, but then it can go up from that as well, depending on circumstances and things like that. And the fact that the people are not only are they the number one asset and the number one, exactly like you said, on the bottom line, like they are let's call it the number one investment a company makes are their people. But the trouble is when they lose people, it
Yeah.
costs them a lot more money to
Probably.
replace them then. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
150% of their salary to
yeah,
replace them.
yeah,
And that doesn't even take into account the loss of intellectual property when you lose your
exactly.
top people.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. This is it. And the relationships that they've built with their teammates and with their clients over time, all of that kind of stuff.
definitely.
Again, we could talk about this all day. I see it as a topic for a whole other day, a whole other podcast episode. But I've absolutely loved having you on the podcast today. Would you like to share with listeners what makes you happier at work?
Oh, thank you so much. The thing that makes me happiest at work is just being able to fulfill my purpose, right?
Yeah,
The reason I started this business is because I want to inspire people. I want to help people, shift their perception of what's possible for them, right? So that they can show up as their best self to work. But, I'm lucky because I've followed that passion and that dream. But I think it's so important for everybody, no matter what you're doing and where you are, is to find purpose in your work, right? In
yeah,
your day. And one of the things that I do is ask myself all day long, how can I bring more joy into this situation? I
yeah.
do that all day long. If I'm going into a meeting, how can I bring more joy, an intention of joy into this conversation or into this project that I'm doing so that I can, always be kind of feeling good. And I think that we can do that no matter where we are in our career, no matter what we're doing. We have a choice of how we're going to experience that day, that moment, whatever it is.
I really like that approach of like you definitely have a choice and entering into any conversation with an intention, and your intention is to create joy. Love that. Really, really love that approach. Nicole, if people want to connect with you, if they want to reach out, if they want to find out more about what you do and what your company offers to other companies and how you can help them, what's the best way that people can do that?
Yeah, so you can definitely find more information about us at balancebynature.com. And we're actually getting ready to launch a brand new app called Wellness Studio TV. I'm so excited about it. We're basically creating a holistic work-life balance and healing program. So it touches every aspect of well-being. It's the physical health, the mental health, the emotional health, the spiritual health, the financial health, all of it kind of wrapped into one. So it's kind of like a combination of a virtual gym because there's live classes of all sorts of
Yeah,
different kinds, but then there's meditation, there's cooking classes. We have a wellness speakers series, motivational talks. There's going to be a new podcast coming out. So it's all going to be on TV apps, mobile apps, and Apple Watch fitness apps. So a lot of really exciting stuff. So pretty soon,
brilliant.
starting in January when we launch, you'll be able to go into the App Store and find our Balance by Nature app. But in the meantime, you can go to balancebynature.com to get more information. But I
Love
just
that.
appreciate the opportunity to be here and to share with people. So thank you.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much, Nicole, for your time today. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. Thank you for inspiring me and hopefully inspiring listeners as well when they tune in to this episode. So, really, really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.